This is Mudge Island. This is where I live. The history of the physical place goes back 4.6 billion years. But it was not a community until there was life here.
Although they may have been here earlier, very early colonies of Mudgekins existed 4 billion years ago at the end of the Hadean Eon and the beginning of the Archean Eon. They were colonies of bacteria and other single-celled organisms. Nearly 80% of Earth's history passed before multicellular life evolved. Mudge was underwater then, and for a long time, but so were all living things.
Let's take a quick look at a timeline so we have an overview of the periods of time we are going to look at. Even though there was a bunch of these available online, my mom decided to make this. Hey Mom, what's it called again?
A chronostratigraphic chart.
Right, like I was saying. She spent 2 whole days making it by hand because she didn't quite like the look or layout of any of the ones available online. Just between you and me, she's kinda cuckoo that way.
Hey, I heard that.
Oops. Well, moving right along. This chart shows the different periods of time, and we are going to talk about what was happening on Mudge during all of this time.
As I mentioned before, microorganisms lived here through the Archean Eon. Life carried on in that simple way for another 3 billion years, progressing very slowly. Then, about 800 million years ago, in the Tonian period, the first known animal appeared, a relative of the sea sponge, called Otavia antiqua. Through the Cryogenian period, green algae grew everywhere. As glaciers melted, this large food source resulted in more animals, like Stromatolivarus, a kind of comb jelly, from 600 million years ago in the Ediacaran period.
At the end of the Precambrian supereon, a mass extinction event occurred. As a result, there was more space for the surviving species to spread out and diversify. This led to
the Cambrian explosion!
A very exciting time for the undersea mudge community.
We have now covered more than 88% of Mudge Island and the rest of Earth's history. If time on Earth was a term paper, by British Columbian standards, we would already have an A- with what has happened up to this point in time at the end of the Precambrian. Think about that for a moment. We get an A-, and the most advanced life form so far is basically some kind of jellyfish.
That means that from the beginning of the Cambrian period all the way to today is less than 12% of all time that Earth has existed. If you are a 50-year-old watching this, that is equal to the amount of your life up until your 6th birthday. We have created a visual aid to show proportions of time in Earth's history.
This string represents the full length of Earth's history from 4.6 billion years ago to today. The beginning is marked with a lime green clothespin, and today is marked by the orange clothespin at the other end. The Precambrian goes all the way from the lime green clothespin to the first flag marker, which is where the Cambrian period begins, 542 million years ago. The next marker is at the largest extinction event ever experienced on Earth, the PT extinction at the end of the Permian. More than 96% of all species on the planet were wiped out at this time, some 251.9 million years ago. Out of the ashes of that mass extinction came the Triassic period and the beginning of the age of the dinosaurs. They ruled the Earth through the Cretaceous, which ended 66 million years ago.
But dinosaurs only ruled the land that became mud during the middle part of this time. In the Jurassic period, in all of the island's history, that was one of only a few times when there were Mudge residents who were taller than Chad. Chad is a fire warden, and he is really tall. Maybe not as tall as a giraffe, but as tall as an okapi, I think.
Anyway, we will talk more about Mudge dinosaurs and humans later. For now, let's get back to the timeline string.
Fine. Other than birds, the last dinosaur died out 66 million years ago. This final little section of the string represents the time from the end of the dinosaurs to now. So maybe we are not as special as we think we are.
We do have an inflated sense of significance. The first Homo sapiens only emerged 300,000 years ago. That means our species is present only on the last 1/3 of the last millimeter of this string.
Let's get back to the order of things. The Cambrian explosion was when many new interesting species showed up. Ecosystems became much more complex.
Bilaterally symmetrical body types became dominant, which was a first. Most new species during the Cambrian were bilaterians. Different interactions between animal species, such as predation, emerged for the first time as well.
Trilobites are one species that appeared in the Cambrian. They became very common. The species survived for at least 300 million years.
In the Ordovician period, the part of the world that would one day become Mudge Island and the surrounding areas was still underwater, well off the coast of the supercontinent Laurentia. The largest animal swimming in the neighborhood was Camarasaurus, a nautilus-like creature that, with its shell, could measure up to 10 meters or 33 feet long.
Next came the Silurian period. Plants and animals were heading onto land at this point, but not here on Pre-Mudge. We were still deep underwater. Lots of exciting things were happening under the sea, though. The first true jawed fish emerged, as well as massive sea scorpions that were almost as long as Chad is tall. The Devonian period was the age of the fish. Greater variety and greater sizes resulted in amazing oceans. Armored fish with powerful jaws grew to 10 meters or 33 feet in length. They dominated the sea, feasting on other fish.
Ah, cannibalism. Isn't that lovely? onward. The Carboniferous period is one of my favorites. On land, forests had grown, sucking up heaps of carbon dioxide. As a result, oxygen levels were about 14% higher than they are today. What kinds of creatures are limited in growth by the oxygen levels in their environments? Bugs! This was the age of massive insects like meter-long cockroaches and 6-foot centipedes. Meganura, Dragonfly's ancestor, took to the sky with a wingspan up to 2.5 feet. So I was decidedly disappointed to learn that Mudge was still underwater for most of this period. It was shallower water now, so I had hoped that perhaps crocodile-like amphibians like Cochleosaurus had lived here. They weren't as cool as titanic tarantulas, but they were still pretty neat. But alas, no. This was a pretty lame period in pre-Mudge prehistory. Do you want to know what lived in our shallow waters? Gastropods. That's right, snails. And they weren't even humongous. They were just snails. It's so unfair!
There, Mummy. It's okay. You mustn't get so worked up about paleontology anyway. Snails are cute. Shall we take a break and have a cup of tea?
No, I'll be all right, Petrea. Thank you. Let's keep going.
Anyway, things are about to get better. Way better!
Yes! At the tail end of the Pennsylvanian epoch, in the Carboniferous period, it finally happened. Mudge Island rose from the water, and we finally had land! We popped up about as far south as modern-day Baja California. Of course, we weren't called Mudge yet, and we weren't the shape we are now. We were part of the Rangalia terrain, which was a small, thin peninsular formation. Undersea lava formed our landmass and pushed it above sea level.
The Permian was the time period of Dimetrodon.
A sail-backed synapsid.
They used to be referred to as mammal-like reptiles, but they weren't exactly reptiles. They also weren't exactly mammals. They were
Synapsids.
Nowadays, we describe them as stem mammals. Anyway, they were super cool, and they lived on Mudge.
Well, it was not exactly Mudge yet, remember? It was Rangalia.
Oh yeah.
Rangalia began to break away from the mainland, forming an island archipelago as it gradually moved away from shore and northward.
We were surrounded by coral. Tons of shells broke down and gradually formed a sandstone layer on top of the lava rock.
The end of the Permian brought about the Great Dying. As mentioned before, the PT extinction was the most devastating mass extinction event in Earth's history. Among the few survivors were cynodonts, small therapsid stem mammals that were able to burrow and were opportunistic foragers, willing and able to eat almost anything.
Here is a fun fact. One species that survived the PT extinction and is almost unchanged to this very day is a plant some of you consume in capsule form.
Ginkgo biloba.